Good evening. Just wanted to do a little reading from a book I've got here. It's called Paranoid Women Collect Their Thoughts. And it was released in 1996. It's edited by a lady called Joan d'Arc, which basically means it's like Joan of Arc, which I'm assuming is a pen name. But she used to write for Paranoia magazine from the States in the 90s. The magazine's, it seems to have folded now. I used to buy it from Forbidden Planet in London, but then they stopped selling it and I kind of lost touch with it. But I used to have this book years ago. She's a good writer. Used to write some very interesting stuff. And I used to have this, and then when I split up with my girlfriend, I lost it. And then I managed to pick up another copy. And there's some really interesting stuff in here about gangstalking. And obviously the title, Paranoid Women. It's got the microchip injection, Orwellian implications. Nuclear hazards, crime against humanity. The dark frontier, master game plan of discarnate intelligence. ET encounters or mind control hoax. That's interesting. That's written by Mary Seal. Mary Seal. And if you don't know, Mary Seal, she was a British researcher. I don't know if she's still alive. You cannot find anything about her on the internet. But she was in the UK. She was the first person, as far as I'm aware, to put on an event in 1993, January 1993, in the Wembley Conference Centre. It was called, I can't remember the title of the event, the first worldwide or conference on a global conspiracy. And Bill Cooper spoke there over 2 days, and Robert Strecker speaking on the origins of the AIDS virus. I believe Vladimir Teretsky spoke there. Or somebody was due to speak there, but they ended up not speaking. Another guy from the Netherlands. Anyway, Mary Seal, she put that event on, and I went to that event. Me and my mate went, Saturday and Sunday it was. I've still got the little ticket stub somewhere, and it was basically commercially it was a disaster, that event. There were about 100 people there, if that, in Wembley Conference Centre, which holds like several thousand people. And there's still an article online from The Independent. They were kind of taking the piss out of it, like the next week. One of their reporters had gone to this event to look at all the crazy paranoid people. And so that was that. And you can still see the video online of Bill Cooper's lecture. But it's only one of them. He did 2 lectures. But Mary Seal, yeah, that's interesting to see that Mary Seal's got an article in here. So it's very interesting stuff to go through, and I'm going to do a few videos because the chapters aren't that long. And just as it happened, I just discovered kind of by chance really that Joan d'Arc, this pen name of this writer, she actually wrote 2 books, which I never knew. I never knew she wrote these books, and I only discovered this a couple of weeks ago. So they were tenner or something on eBay. So I went on there. This is the first one: Space Travellers and the Genesis of the Human Form: Evidence of Intelligent Contact in the Solar System. So there you go, and it's really, really small text. I haven't had a chance to go through these books yet because I've just got so much to read and so much stuff going on. This one was published in 2000, 25 years ago. Never knew about this. Space Travellers and the Genesis of Human Form by Joan Dark. So that's the first one. And she wrote another one, a follow-up book called Phenomenal World. Phenomenal World, Remote Viewing, Astral Travel, Apparitions, Extraterrestrials, Lucid Dreams, and Other Forms of Intelligent Contact in the Magical Kingdom of Mind at Large. Now, a lot of people are getting into this stuff recently. Back in the day, it wasn't such a big deal, but like this was written in or published in again 2000. By The Book Tree. That's the publisher. But there you go. Again, very small text, so it's probably about the way they space pages or words on pages these days from these books you get on Amazon. This is like 200 pages. It's probably worth about 300-400 pages for the amount of the size the text is. So if you're interested, maybe go and try and pick these up. Because they look really good. They look really interesting. I want to get into them at some point, but like haven't started on them yet. But anyway, that's a heads up. So, Gangstalking, a subject I'm very interested in. I've got my own personal thoughts on it, but here we go. Look, this was published. This Paranoid Women Collect Their Thoughts. This was published in 1996, and here an article by Judy Wall, Synthetic Telepathy. A lot of people are getting into this synthetic telepathy now, but like it's not been this is back in the day. This was written. Anyway, maybe I'll do that one later, tomorrow or something. But I wanted to read one I was just looking at. Oh God, I've lost it now. Where is it? Bear with me. Okay. The Travelling Torture Chamber by Regina Cullen. Microwave harassment, gangsterism, and Freemasonry. So let's have a look at this. It's only like 4 pages. 5 pages. It's interesting to go back and look at this stuff. I'm going to change this. Okay. The Travelling Torture Chamber by Regina Cullen. Throughout my life, sleep was never a problem. I never thought about it because I always slept soundly, even though 11 months of total disruption by a hooligan and his unsavoury girlfriend who were moved into a tiny bedsit next to mine under mysterious circumstances, according to an official of the local authority who looked into it for me later. This criminal vandal was employed as a gas fitter. Of that type of occupation, I was later told they're all Freemasons, you know. I had a similar experience in my old flat in London. These fuckers that moved above me, man, I could have killed them. I smashed the wall with a sledgehammer one night, the ceiling. They were making so much noise. From January to November of 85, I was subjected to daily abuse. My walls beaten on, my bicycle tyres slashed, my car broken into, my doorbell ripped out, myself twice assaulted in the hall. I am certain it began because I made a complaint against the local police in 1984. And in an unrelated affair that year, got on the wrong side of a Freemason employed by American big business. Shortly after making the complaint, I was subjected to false arrest for a minor charge, which was nonetheless a brazen lie, by police officers of whom I was requesting assistance, and I was railroaded through a malicious prosecution. Also that year I got divorced from a person in rock and roll who possibly had Masonic connections. Freemasonry is an all-pervasive alternative power structure, most certainly in England, and is the cult religion of intelligence agencies, military structures, police and government agencies. I believe my name was added to the list of victims of secret and experimental technology. The nature and monstrous proportions of the vendetta against me have made it clear that the persons with the grudge are not the operatives who carry it out. An outbreak of what I have experienced occurred in a place called Teesside in the early 80s, and interestingly, the American big business Mason used to go there. In November 1985, a new element of harassment appeared. My home was rendered uninhabitable by frequency assault. What I now know to be microwaves and or infrasound were used to trim the room into a torture chamber. I had to go elsewhere to sleep when this type of interference replaced the normal harassment and was used constantly until November 1989. It was an irregularly pulsed humming sound, impossible to tell which direction it came from, seemingly louder when one was lying down and filling the air with a menace inimical to life, a sense of crushing weight and oppression, and shock waves like a beating. It reverberated most in the area just behind the ear, the mastoid bone area, which is filled with air pockets, and caused my eyes to ache and my forehead to feel fuzzy and interfered with. I managed to move from the bedsit, a room for one, but only had one free night before it began there, and in the ensuing years I was followed many places. Sometimes, in outrage at being forced out of my home, I would return in the middle of the night to find complete peace and quiet, but 10 or 20 minutes later the frequency assault would begin again. This often happened in the daytime for the first year or so. Then it only came on usually at night. The effects were not just overtly physical, they were also what I call etheric, meaning it felt as if my aura itself had been instantly destroyed, stripped away, leaving an indescribable sense of obscenity. In January of 1986, someone gave me refuge, and after 4 days it began in their home, driving us out with identical effects, but even more intense. Our flesh felt as if it were being kneaded like dough, accompanied by loud machine-like sounds as if there was a printing press being operated nearby. I believe the source of the assault was the flat above, unless micro-technology is hidden in one's own flat, for this took place on the 11th floor. There were no houses of comparable height nearby, and the flat above was inhabited by the building's caretaker, who to my consternation had seemed to know me, having made a rude remark to me in the hall one afternoon, as if he had been told something about me. On the day this happened, there had been a man pretending to be asleep in a red car parked half onto the sidewalk in front of the building's entrance. I was instantly afraid of him, but warned myself not to be paranoid. 2 weeks later, as I was running suddenly for a bus and looking over my shoulder, I caught him ducking behind a van to avoid being seen following me. Earlier, back at the bedsit, intuition had given me another clue to look out of my spy hole just as the hooligan was being handed a strange box with orange hemispherical plastic knobs on each corner by a trench-coated detective type who did not speak and took care not to creak the hallway doors. This proved the hooligan was also involved in the frequency assault, which had begun by then, and not long after that I saw him carrying in full view a small Christmas tree-shaped aerial, and he seemed upset that I'd seen it. The trench-coated policeman type virtually held the hand of this creep when he had to appear before a judge for assaulting me. This same man who I had seen from my spy hole vantage point even moved right up front to look the judge in the face as if to say, "This is one of our boys." And indeed no sentence was passed, even though another person in the building had come with me as a witness. I moved in February 1986, and it was that summer that I let a homeless person live in my spare room. From the very day he arrived, the frequency assault reduced in intensity to just background levels, as I suspected it would, in order to prevent my having an ally to verify what was happening. Perhaps it did not occur in his room, since microwave beams can be tailored to just one person in a room, just one house, etc. But I found I still had to counter it by sleeping with an electric fan with a steady low hum right by my head to drown out that maddening, irregularly pulsed hum. At these reduced levels, not everyone present might hear it. Another characteristic indicating electromagnetic rather than acoustic sound. It wasn't long before I became aware of a house down the street which seemed to be a base for operatives. The first obvious sign of illegal entry by lock-picking was left in order to intimidate me. A car with an Asian driver had been parked across the street from the outdoor cafe where I was sitting. A well-dressed man carrying a Gladstone bag passed before me 3 times. He seemed tense. When I got home, I found the storage trunk where I kept my papers relating to this subject had been opened, and its lock left at a 45-degree angle. Padlock undone also. The car, which was positioned to watch for my leaving, radioed ahead to the lockpick to warn him, Gladstone bag and all. "We can do what we want, you can't do anything about it," seems to be part of the message. Many people, alarm companies, private codes, maybe a collusion, know the hard way that even burglar alarm systems do not keep these people out. It was the same car, I believe, with 2 Asians inside, that screeched to a halt one afternoon in front of that house, and it was from the same house that one day a burly blonde man emerged and stared at me as if he knew me. This was the same man, I think, who stood at a distance, irate it seemed, watching me tie up a broken bicycle I had just pushed all the way from Kensington through Hyde Park to the University of London. I had the impression he was put out because he'd had to follow me. Oh, he was pissed off because he'd had to follow her. Excuse me. In January of 1986, I stayed 3 days in a woman's refuge. There I met an elderly woman who complained about Big Brother and being followed all over London. I found her to be all too sane. In her room, the Type 1 frequency assault was apparent, and the flat across the street had a most unusual aerial on the roof and kept its lights on all night. When I called other girls into that room at midnight, they told me they thought the flat was some sort of office. As we talked, the frequency assault suddenly stopped, and only one of the girls said she had heard it. As I watched the street alone in the room, a man's head appeared in the window. He was an older man with a hard edge, sort of crew-cut grey hair. The lights went out, and then he emerged, walked to a house 5 or 6 doors away, and went in without turning on any lights. Quite some time later, I read that an Irish girl employed at the refuge had been kept under surveillance. It's clear to me that the flat in question was a base of operations, no doubt occupied during the day by people other than the grey-haired man, who must have lived in the other house nearby. I lived in Hampstead from February 1986 to October 1993. And another episode will show how close by the neighbourhood operatives are based. My front door was unlocked after I was out for only 15 minutes. It was a Sunday and a neighbour had come to visit and I'd gone out to get the papers. Upon returning, I found the door hanging open, the latch having been sprung so it wouldn't shut. My neighbour had heard a click from inside. Burglaries are also still taking place. For example, in 1995, I bought a new cooking pot, and a couple of weeks later, when I took it out to use it, I found spit inside of it. Also, the piece of foam I have been sleeping on has the word Hawaii printed across its edge. This word was not there before. I don't know if this is just a nasty reminder that I'm being bugged, or a vicious hint that inside the mattress is microtechnology used to create the cooked hot burning skin effect. I've read that a battery to power a bug can be half the diameter of a human hair, and I assume that a transmitter or frequencies could also be tiny. My skin, despite being in this cloudy, cold climate, has become very sensitive to the sun. With all this going on, is it any wonder I cannot accept the easy rationalisation that I'm just suffering from the effects of accidental electromagnetic pollution, which is especially prevalent in cities? Question mark. In one of the burglaries, the strap of my favourite slip was cut in half. I'd been trying clothes on with a girlfriend in my flat, so it seems that cameras are being used. This friend might never have become a friend, as initially my phone was manipulated so that she thought I was being rude to not be around when she'd arranged to phone. Tricks like making my phone sound like it's ringing to her, but in my home it was not. She's talking about landline phones. This is before mobiles. I was listened to in silence when I obtained an interview with a high-level police officer at the local station in 1989. When I described the phone interference, a witnessing officer nodded his head to himself, confirming he knew about that sort of thing. I tried before to get help from the police to no avail, but by 89 I had met another victim who had told me about the code word buzzing used for frequency assault. A relative of hers had told her she had overheard two officers discussing having it done to someone for petty revenge purposes. When I used that word in requesting an interview, the response came the very next day. Type 1 frequency assault stopped for 6 weeks. This does not prove that the police helped, but only that someone seemed to know about the interview. I was sent away from the station with, "We don't want to hear any more about it." The clearest demonstration that both Type 1 and 2 are deliberate, separate and real phenomena is this. After Mary Seal's Global Deception Conference in London in January 93, I haven't even read this, and I just mentioned it at the beginning of the thing. Isn't that weird? A little bit weird. Ain't that strange? So I must have brushed shoulders with the woman who wrote this at some point, maybe. That was it, yeah, Global Deception Conference. After Mary Seal's Global Deception Conference in London in January 93, I was invited to a TV studio by a friend of the organiser, that was Mary Seal, who, excuse me, my light's a bit weird, who I was told wanted moral support in the studio audience. Now I think Mary Seal may be in January, not blah blah blah. Mary Seal, maybe I'm thinking now. Possibly she was on an edition of. There was a guy called John Ronson, that guy who wrote that book about the psychopath test. Is that the book he wrote? John Ronson. John Ronson. I believe she may have been on one of the programs that he presented in the 90s. It was like a round table discussion program. I can't remember the name of it. Tim Refat was on one of them. Can't remember the name of the program off the top of my head. I'll have to do some more. Try and dig it out, see if I can find that. Maybe she was. I do seem to remember seeing her on some sort of TV program, and she was talking to other people. She could have been on that. Anyway, sorry. Where were we? Who I was told wanted moral support in the studio audience. I'm guessing this is Mary Seal. Who was talking? I was not prepared to be asked to speak, and when a question was directed to me, I spilled the beans about my home being rendered uninhabitable by electromagnetic technology, and my suspicion that a police complaint and Freemasonry was the cause of it. At home that night, after a couple of years of relative freedom from Type 1 frequency assault, Type 1 was turned on very strongly. Symptoms of Type 1 include a bizarre feeling that the right and left halves of the brain are separating, with a cap in between, as if parts of the head and face are rearranged spatially, as in a cubist painting. There is an impression... I'm just thinking about migraine headaches. I used to suffer from migraines really bad. Some of them are like cubist kind of... sorry. There is an impression of slight puffiness in the face, a flattening of the nose, and definement of features. 2 weeks later, when the show was aired, Type 2 was turned on so badly that I was devastated. I could hardly breathe and felt like I was in an oven. Each breath is like trying to inhale searing desert air, along with the usual headache and severe lassitude, sore tired eyes, fatigue, hot burning skin, old scars throbbing, and an overwhelming sense of oppression, evil and helplessness. Relaxation is impossible under both types of frequency assault. The sick, sadistic nature of operatives who can do these things to people means that these types are sought out and kept busy deliberately because they are useful for terrorising society. The more people know what can be done to them clandestinely, in their homes, in their beds, the more effective is the state terror, gangsterism and the protection racket. Death squads and demonstration killings are less subtle methods, although they do happen here, as in the convenient death of organic farmer Mike Purdy. I'm not sure what that is about, it might be interesting to look up. I think the ways of the Iron Curtain have been much admired by certain factions in our society. Yeah. I've suspected subliminals, microwaves are used for carrier waves, that's in brackets, have been used to disrupt my relationships and cause unhappiness. I wonder if false files are created to induce cooperation among people otherwise uninvolved, who may be approached for various reasons, perhaps to spy or write propaganda articles or help destroy someone's reputation. It's 7:30, it's getting a little bit dark, put the light on. Or to help operatives to hate more effectively. Maybe subliminals are used on people to make it easier for them to dehumanise their subjects. A call from a man named Whistlethorpe, whose voice dripped with nasty sarcasm and contempt, came shortly after I had, in some distress, called a friend to request company after a particularly bad night of type 1 assault. I feared the harassment would go on all day if I remained alone. This phone call was to rub salt in the wounds and came before my friend had time to arrive. "My name is Whistlethorpe," obviously a phony name in brackets, he said. "It's going to take you a long time to figure out who I am, isn't it?" He went on about this UFO interest of yours. Sounds like a sort of man in MIB type thing. You get weird phone calls, you read the John Keel books, people start researching UFOs. The next thing, like, weird shit's going on with their phone. They're getting weird phone calls. The phone, no one on the phone, or some weird voice. "We understand you have been researching UFOs." So a classic. It's like classic shit. Go and read the John Keel books. Classic stuff. He went on about this UFO interest of yours, as I had recently become actively interested in ufology. My own voice inadvertently dropped in tone in replying, and at that a gasp was heard from a third party listening in and hanging on every word. This man, I believe, has the job of harassing me. One evening, as I sat in a small boa I had created in the back of my garden, something shot through my head with a strange sound as it happened, seeming to come from behind the fence. I was terrified and could no longer sleep there any more. A year or so later, sitting in front of the window with the curtains open, the same thing happened again, and the TV instantly turned to snow, like on the TV, like the screen went. The alignment that time of the invisible beam was such that it came from above and on the other side of the garden, from the very area where in 1986 had appeared a momentary pencil-like beam of white light which was aimed at my bathroom window. Okay, now I'm getting a little bit confused because I'm not actually sure where she's living, because I thought we were talking about 1993 now, or after, and now she's talking about 1986 in the same place. Maybe she's got a home and she's gone back there or something. I'm not sure. I'd earlier covered the window with the sort of film used on car windows to make them one way. I was in my garden when this happened, and I saw the light splash off the film like water. In the summer of last year, I began to have seizures as well as a feeling of metallic liquid moving in that area of my head. Oh, Christ. Metallic liquid in the head. That's nightmarish. Nightmarish. These increased in intensity until by New Year of 1995 they became severe. They haven't occurred since February. Sorry. A year or so later. So in 1994 she's getting this weird thing when she's sitting in the garden. She must have gone back to somewhere she previously lived. Unless it's a typo or something, I don't know. Sorry, where was I? Yeah. These increased in intensity until by New Year of 1995 they became severe. They haven't occurred since February. Medical investigation has not so far determined the cause of my dizziness, nausea, disorientation, dry throat, weight on chest, palpitations, though I have not yet had a brain scan due to the appalling slowness of the NHS. Well, it's not got any better, love. Stay away from it. You've got a health problem, get on an aeroplane. Go and get health treatment in Hungary, or if you want a bit of sunshine, get on an aeroplane and get health treatment, pay for health treatment in Mexico. That will be my advice to you. NHS. So much has happened, and it goes on with such fanaticism that I often awake in the night very frightened that I'm being murdered, fiendishly and covertly. A typical night might involve some real sleep for a while, and then waking under the influence of type 2 at low levels of intensity every hour or so. This type 2 assault is so debilitating I can hardly rise at all in the morning. As a result, my sleep patterns are now totally random. Join the club. At present, my eyes ache constantly. During the day, one is forced to act normal and can't go around saying such things are happening. I can sleep normally if I get away to some safe, unexpected place, unfollowed, unplanned, but it takes about 3 days for my eyes to feel normal again. I often have vivid, unpleasant dreams when type 2 is apparent, often filled with strangers and a sense of frustration at trying to accomplish something and being unable to. I don't normally remember dreams and have never had insomnia. Start writing your dreams down, then you'll start remembering them. Many times I've been put to sleep, I think, by brainwave entrainment, especially when I begin to watch something on TV I've especially arranged to watch, and have been wide awake just moments before, and when the programme's over, I suddenly feel wide awake again. Interesting. That's interesting. The woman who told me about the word buzzing has had this happen to her also. She has had a lot of the same experiences. Once while sitting in her kitchen, I was overcome by bizarre hostility towards her, such irritation that I had to leave, and as I went out she said, "Look at your face in the mirror." It was mulberry colour, so deeply red and totally unnatural. I've never felt like that before, and I am absolutely certain it was an induced effect. It's known that microwaves can be modulated to manipulate emotions, and that they can redden skin. In the home of another victim, this just reminded me of something I was thinking about yesterday, off topic. Something really strange used to happen. When I was a kid, there used to be, it was like a football game called Subutio, where you had there was a pitch. It was like a piece of cloth, and you'd open up this piece of cloth, like a felt cloth, and it had a football pitch printed on it, about 5 foot by 3 foot, and you'd spread it out on the floor, and you had little football figures, like you just placed them on. One team 11, another team, you're playing your friend, he's got 11, and you'd flick the footballs, the footballers, they would hit the football and the football would move around. It was like playing snooker with a little snooker, but with footballers. And I remember, it's funny because I was just thinking about it yesterday before reading this. I remember when I played Subutio around my mate's house, every time, because you'd have to touch the felt to play the game. Within about 15 minutes, my forearms, both of my forearms and my hands, they would go like bright red. And my mate was always laughing at me, and it was every time my forearms would go bright red. It was some kind of weird reaction to the Subutio thing. That was weird. Anyway, so, okay. Sorry. It was mulberry colour, blah, blah, blah. I've never felt like that before, and I'm absolutely certain it was an induced effect. It's known that microwaves can be modulated to manipulate emotions and that they can redden skin. In the home of another victim of more than a decade of sabotage and frequency assault, I once clearly perceived a spoken sentence in the air, saying something very nasty and sarcastic to her. In retrospect, it could have been Whistlethorpe himself. Though this was before he called me. Microwaves can also be modulated to create the perception of speech in the brain. This woman used to say she was being gotten at by remote hypnosis. Because we in Britain have not even a Bill of Rights to protect us, we are more easily used as experimental animals. Yeah, right. And I've read that people here are used for American research as well as British. I can quite believe there is a new global octopus dedicated to totalitarian mind control. The very painful turbulence in one of my relationships may be due to mind control experimentation. Isolated, vulnerable people, too poor to escape and easily written off as hysterical women or as having panic attacks, are targets. The innate misogyny of Freemasonry is also relevant. Another victim I met, who suffered through type 1 and numerous burglaries after a divorce, told me, "I never thought of it as important before. When I asked her if her husband was a Mason, her answer was yes. When I described type 2 to another victim I met, he recognised it instantly. The pattern with both types is the same. The harassment is more obvious in the beginning and becomes more covert, so that later the victim is further tormented but is less able to demonstrate it to others." Crazy making, gaslighting. I've never been able to tape record type 1, even with equipment supposedly sensitive to very low frequency sound waves, but I have never had the assistance of very high powered scientific equipment or someone present to use it. Since extremely low levels of power can induce effects, and since many parameters may form components of the frequencies used, detection may even be impossible. Cumulative effects of microwave exposure can result in memory impairment, from which I certainly suffer. All involved instigators and operatives are criminals, people with too much unaccountable power, indulging in whimsical cruelty and brutality for egotistically imagined wrongs, including in extreme arrogance, assuaging annoyances with Nazi-like perverted amusement, doing it because they can get away with it, parasitising and subverting tax money. With problems like these, it is difficult to have friends. Others disbelieve me, rationalise, feel guilty if they can do nothing for me, or fear for their own safety. But you can at least do this much. Inform yourself, inform others, be concerned. Dirty tricks teams rely on a blind eye. The bigger the lie, the more believable, the feel-good factor. I am certain that all that has happened could not have begun for any political reason, though later meeting Greenham Common protesters, they were the people that were protesting against the nuclear weapons in the 80s in Salisbury, Reading, somewhere near Reading in Berkshire, Greenham Common. A lot of Greenham Common women complain that they were being harassed by kind of electromagnetic devices, getting sick and getting ill because they had a big camp at the side of the military base. Later meeting Greenham Common protesters where frequency assault was used may have added to my punishment as guilty by association. I've been told impersonation is one of their techniques. Who are these thugs? Military research staff? Civilian intelligence gangs? Private security firm contractors? In a photo taken in 1988, sorry, what paragraph I got? In a photo taken in 1988, I am doing my rock and roll persona, trying to look defiant as a hopeful prelude to gaining independence. But I often despair of ever throwing off the burden of constant fear. The price of freedom is eternal vigilance. I know it's a cliche, but in Britain today, whistleblowing has been criminalised, not protected by law. We're exhorted to live by the rule of law, but if the laws are unjust, the rule of law is tyranny. Blind obedience is one of the highly unattractive aspects of Freemasonry and of a police career. Freemasonry has its own secret religion, and I think the definition cult is appropriate. I would like to see an investigation into these groups for fostering gangsterism. Oh, I thought it was quite interesting. A little account from the 80s, 90s. One thing I just want to have a look at before I finish and I forget about it. Just do a quick little Google search. The convenient death of organic farmer Mark Purdy. Let's have a quick look at that if I can get it up. One second. Organic farmer Mark Purdy. Okay. There's actually a Wikipedia entry. This is going to be interesting. Let's have a quick look at this. John Mark Purdy, 25th December 53, died in 2006. Whoa, 1 second. 1 second. One second. What's going on here? What's going on? Oh, where the fuck is it? What have I just read? Oh. The convenient death of organic farmer Mark Purdy. But this was published in 1996 and this is saying that he died in 2006. What's going on? It's like the Mandela effect in full effect. He died of a brain tumour on 12th of November 2006 on his farm in Elworthy, West Somerset. This is weird. Maybe they've just got it wrong on Wikipedia. Mark Purdy was an English organic farmer who came to public attention in the 1980s when he began to circulate his own theories regarding the causes of bovine spongiform encephalopathy, BSE or mad cow disease. Investigation into BSE. Purdy's interest in the disease was triggered when 4 cows he purchased for his farm developed the disease, though no animal raised on his farm ever contacted it. Four cows he purchased developed the disease, though no animal raised on his farm ever. So the four cows that he bought contracted it, but his cows didn't. He also became aware of a fact also considered by the Phillips inquiry. The practice in the UK of recycling animal protein as an ingredient of animal feed dates back to at least 1926. In the 1970s, attention was directed within MAF, that's like an agricultural, the environmental thing in England, to the danger that this practice would result in the spread of infectious diseases. The diseases considered were those caused by conventional viral and bacterial organisms. No consideration appears to have been given to the risk that scrapie might be recycled in sheep or even transmitted to other farm animals. This may seem surprising. The answer probably lies in the fact that half a century had elapsed without any indication that animal feed containing ovine protein was infecting sheep or any other animal. Mark Purdy has published a number of papers in which he set down his belief that BSE was a transmissible disease that had an environmental cause. He suggested this cause might be phosmet, a systemic organophosphate insecticide that was being spread along the spines of intensively farmed cows to eradicate warble fly. Purdy believed that the chemicals derived from military nerve gases disturbed the balance of metals in the animals' brains, namely reducing copper and increasing manganese, giving rise to the misfolded proteins called prions that are regarded as the cause of BSE. Through the High Court, he successfully challenged the British government's compulsory warblefly eradication programme, which would have compelled him to treat his own cattle with the insecticide. The Phillips inquiry rejected the original organophosphate hypothesis because the BSE epidemic continued even after phosmet use had become minimal, yet most importantly because the original theory did not comport with the differences in BSE incidence between Guernsey and Jersey, opposite from what the original theory predicted. In his later papers on BSE, Purdy suggested in his modified hypothesis that a combination of high manganese and low copper in the soil, together with high environmental oxidizing agents, might initiate a self-perpetuating free radical medicated neurodegenerative disease process, e.g. a TSE, in susceptible genotypes. He later speculated that Parkinson's and Alzheimer's may have similar biochemical triggers and pathways as transmissible spongiform encephalopathies, TSEs or prion diseases. His work was published in a number of minor peer-reviewed journals. He delivered lectures around the world to farmers and academics and was invited to present his research to the British government's Phillips inquiry into BSE. Purdy called himself an underground scientist and eco-detective. He received a number of awards from New Age and organic farming organisations. Nonetheless, Purdy's views have not been accepted by mainstream scientists, mainly because official UK response to the epidemic conflates transmissibility with susceptibility. Yet the Phillips inquiry, where have we heard that before? Yet the Phillips inquiry has been reported as concluding that the theory that BSE is caused by the application to cattle of organophosphorus pesticides is not viable, although there is a possibility that these can increase the susceptibility. It's like they're saying two different things. The susceptibility of cattle to BSE. It's not causing it, but it might be causing susceptibility. And if they're susceptible, then they might get it. So it's kind of causing it, right? No. Wordplay. An uncritiqued, unpublished report stated broadly that Purdy's modified hypothesis did not fit the spatial distribution of reported incidences, but did not have the precision to decisively confirm or deny the modified hypothesis. Purdy's scientific inquiries were based on his fieldwork at outbreak hotspots worldwide, an analysis of documentary evidence. Thus his papers are mainly theoretical and contain no biochemical or clinical research. So, don't believe your lying eyes. His modified theory awaits the results of future scientific inquiry. One aspect of ongoing research has been an examination of the flawed official scientific reasoning during the UK BSE crisis. There is also bias in comprehending, interpreting and reporting the conclusions of Purdy, other scientists and even the Phillips inquiry, which actually stated the theory that BSE was caused by a reaction to the use of organophosphorus compounds poured on cattle as systemic pesticides cannot be reconciled with the epidemiology and is not supported by research. One experiment has, however, given some limited support to the possibility that the OP phosmet might modify the susceptibility of cells to the prion disease agent. Then it tells you a little bit about his personal life. In his mid-20s, he set up an organic dairy farm in Ireland, then in Pembrokeshire. He bred a herd of pedigree Jersey cattle. He wrote on his website that he introduced semen from New Zealand, Denmark and Canada to produce a high-fat, high-yielding, pasture-fed Jersey cow. Good man. With an ability to produce milk from a self-sufficient arable legume grass rotational system with minimal reliance upon purchased in concentrate feed. In 97, one of his cows was the highest yielding Jersey cow in the UK with 150 litre lactation after she had been sold to a conventional farm. He was reported to enjoyed playing the saxophone to his cows to keep them calm. In 97. In 1997, one of his cows says, well, how did he die in 1996? This book was published in 1996. Talking about his untimely death. It's got to be the same guy. He died of a brain tumour on the 12th of November 2006. His anti-establishment views, his doggedness and his willingness to educate himself brought him some high-level contacts in the UK, including the Prince of Wales and Lord King, the former Defence Secretary, who regarded Purdy's work as a classic piece of scientific investigation. It was King who, in April 1993, formally alerted the Ministry of Agriculture to Purdy's research after Purdy forwarded King a letter from Professor Satoshi Ishikawa of Kitasato University, who wrote that Purdy's description about mad cows to organophosphates compounds and warble fly is exactly true. I wonder if they sell milk in Japan. It's this strange milk that's had. They do something to the land to produce this kind of hyper milk. I can't remember the name of it. I drank some when I was out there. Theresa Gorman, MP for Billericay, and Ted Hughes, the Poet Laureate, were also supporters, while readers of The Guardian contributed to a fund to help pay for his research. and its human equivalent, Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, CJD. His legal victory attracted letters from farmers who believed that using OP compounds had caused their animals' health problems. Purdy began to educate himself about the science of OPs just as the first recorded case of BSE was confirmed. He became convinced there was a connection, in part because cattle in Britain had been given unusually high doses of OPs, and in part because the theory that BSE was spread by contaminated meat and bone meal did not, he argued, explain why the disease was not occurring in countries that had imported the same meat and bone meal from the UK. The Telegraph writes that public support for Purdy increased after the BBC aired a documentary about his theory in 1988. That might be interesting to look at. His theories encouraged researchers to publish in 1999 statistical correlations between the epidemiology of BSE in cattle, scrapie in sheep, and VCJD in humans. I'm sure they're right about their dates. In 2001, the European Commission Health and Consumer Protection Directorate General differentiated between the BSE transmission and BSE susceptibility, stating that the main problem in determining factors that increase susceptibility to BSE was the very limited data set, which could not sustainably confirm or deny possible factors. As more data and research has occurred, Purdy's theories still appear relevant, although untested. GM Watch reported that Purdy's research and fieldwork indicates organophosphate and manganese exposure could increase the incidence of death, contrary to the claims of some corporations. How very strange. I mean, this has got to be the same guy she's talking about. He's got an obituary in The Guardian from 2006. Another obituary in The Independent from 2006. But this has got to be the same guy. Let me get this off. I can't see. But this woman's writing about his death in 1996. I used to have this book in 96, 97. It's not a reprint, it's not an expanded edition. How weird is that? How weird is that? I don't know. Anyway, there you go. And check these out. Well worth getting hold of. Even though I haven't read them, they look well worth it. For a tenner, You're stuck for something to read. Okay. Thank you. End the video.